ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Praia. Good afternoon, and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. New Senegalese legislature to be inaugurated today, December 2nd, amid Macky Sall's withdrawal. Special voting begins nationwide in Ghana for security officials and other institutions, but postponed in two regions due to ballot leakage.
The ballot papers for the two regions, Eastern Region and Western Region, will be destroyed by burning, and a new reprint ordered.
Malian army announces the neutralization of key leaders of armed groups in the north, and advocates highlight unique challenges for people with disabilities and HIV in commemoration of World AIDS Day.
A woman who is HIV positive and blind, for example, may not have access to information even on how do you take your drugs and things like that. Other people who have hearing, speech impairment.
Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us, and a warm welcome to our listeners across the sub-region and beyond. We begin the bulletin here in Senegal, where the inaugural session of Senegal's newly elected legislature is about to commence any moment from now, marking the beginning of a new parliamentary term after the early legislative elections held on November 17. The elections followed the dissolution of parliament on September 12. Among the notable developments is the withdrawal of former President Macky Sall, who was elected as a member of parliament under the Dakar-Senegal coalition's ticket. Sall announced that he will not take up his seat in the National Assembly. Echa Tisu reports.
Senegal's new parliamentary session will officially begin on December 2, 2024, as announced in a presidential decree. This marks the first session following the early legislative elections triggered by the dissolution of Parliament on September 12 by President Bassirou Diomaye Faye. Among the key outcomes of the election is a decision by former President Macky Sall, who was elected on the Dakar-Senegal coalition's ticket, to forego his seat in the National Assembly. Sall stated that he would resign from his mandate as a deputy at the opening of the next legislature, in line with a commitment he had made earlier to allow the necessary legal processes to take place. The Dakar-Senegal coalition, led by Sall during the elections, secured second place with 531,466 votes, representing 14.67%, earning 16 seats, including 8 through proportional representation. In line with Senegal's electoral rules, Sall's seats will be allocated to the next eligible candidate from the coalition's list. Sall's decision mirrors a precedent set in 2017 by his predecessor Abdoulaye Wadr, who was opted out of parliament after leading his coalition in legislative elections. The elections solidified the presidential coalition's dominance, with 1.9 million votes representing 54.9%, securing them 130 of the 165 seats in parliament.
Eche Atisu filed that report. Meanwhile, Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko, elected as a deputy, said on Monday that he will continue to exercise his functions as head of government, believing that the president, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, needed him at his side. The Prime Minister, who spoke to journalists from the state media, said he came to the National Assembly to submit his letter of resignation. He also believes that whoever becomes the president of the assembly will be competent enough to steer the affairs of the House. The debate over Prime Minister's retention in office has been heated after PASTEF, the party led by Ousmane Sonko, emerged victorious in the legislative elections, with some political and civil society actors advocating that he migrate to the National Assembly to occupy the presidency. The African Patriot of Senegal for Work Ethics and Fraternity declare winners of the election hold 130 seats of the 165 in the 15th legislature.
Ah, bien sûr. Vous savez qu'il y a beaucoup de choses à faire dans cette assemblée, aussi bien au plan de la gestion.
Of course, there are many things to do in this assembly, both in terms of management and administration, but also in terms of exercising the powers devolved to the assembly. I believe that everything needs to be done, so there is bound to be a breakthrough. innovation, and above all, a lot of initiative on the part of the Assembly, which must no longer be a receiving institution, but one that has its own color and must be able to play a role in line with the attributions that the Constitution recognizes. You know, the problem in this country is that we fixate on working positions, not on the institution. The President of the National Assembly does not determine the National Assembly. He has virtually no means of influencing the National Assembly. He does not even vote. The President of the National Assembly receives, convenes the Bureau, and it is the purpose that decides. And if he validates, it goes to the committee. It goes out in the open. And in the open, it's the parliamentary group that debates and votes. So it's not the President of the National Assembly who can, at the very least, appear to have the role of keeping things up to date. And that is also done with the Bureau. These are collegial decisions. The same applies to the President of the Republic and the Prime Minister. So a lot of people fixate on individuals saying the President of the National Assembly, the President of the Republic, but a republic functions in a much more collegial way.
C'est un rôle important, c'est la deuxième personnalité de l'État, mais en réalité, ce n'est pas lui qui détermine la vie de l'Assemblée, c'est les groupes parlementaires véritablement qui déterminent la vie de l'Assemblée.
Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko speaking there. Will bring you details from the inaugural session of Senegal's 15th legislature and our subsequent bulletin.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Remember, we're live on YouTube at WADR and on Facebook at WADR English Service. The Ghana's Electoral Commission will today hold a special voting exercise, giving election officials, security personnel and media practitioners an early opportunity to cast their ballot ahead of the country's December 7 general election. However, due to the leakage of a ballot paper from one of the print houses, Checkpoint Printing Limited Printing House, the exercise in the western and eastern regions have been postponed to Thursday, December 5, 2024. The nationwide special voting exercise scheduled for 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. will have seen a total of 131,000 eligible voters participate. These voters represent a small fraction of about 0.007% of the country's 18.7 million eligible voters. The Electoral Commission, via a press briefing on Sunday, announced a delay in the western and eastern regions due to a serious incident involving ballot leakage. A defaced ballot paper taken from Checkpoint Printing Limited led the EC to order a recall and reprinting of ballots for these regions. Here is Chairperson of Ghana's Electoral Commission, John Mensah.
On Friday night, the Commission was informed by the National Security that one single defaced ballot paper meant for the Eastern region had been taken out of the printing house. The printing was undertaken by the Checkpoint Limited. In the light of this revelation and information from the National Security, the Commission took the decision that in order to ensure and guarantee the integrity of the election in the Eastern region, the ballot papers for the Eastern region should be recalled and new ballot papers printed for the region. Additionally, it has been agreed by all the Commission and all the parties that because the printing house, Checkpoint, also printed ballot papers for the Western region, those ballot papers should also be recalled and printed. And I'd like to note that this was arrived at by the Commission and the political parties, and so there has been agreement here. Therefore, the ballot papers for the two regions, Eastern region and Western region, will be destroyed by burning, and a new reprint ordered starting today. It is important to note that in order to ensure the integrity of the ballot paper, the Commission will introduce new security features onto ballots that will be printed for the Eastern region and the Western region. In addition to that, the serial numbers for those ballots for the two regions would be revised. This is to ensure that there would be a marked difference between what has already gone and what has already been printed and what will be printed.
John Mensah is chairperson of Ghana's Electoral Commission. Still talking electoral matters, with less than a year to Côte d'Ivoire's presidential election, candidates have begun to announce their bids. With the 2025 presidential election in Côte d'Ivoire approaching, candidates are starting to officially declare their intentions to run. Among them is former First Lady Simone Gbagbo, who was nominated over the weekend as the presidential candidate for her party, the Movement of Generations, Capable Generations, MGC. Speaking during the party's first convention held in Mosul, her hometown located about 30 kilometers from Abidjan, the nation's economic capital, Simone Gbagbo announced her ambition to build a new Côte d'Ivoire. Christopher Ticho has more.
Simone Gbagbo, former First Lady of Côte d'Ivoire, was unanimously selected as the Mouvement de Génération capable candidate for the 2025 presidential election.
I have decided to run as a candidate in the October 2025 presidential election. I offer you a bold vision to build a fully transformed, modernized, and prosperous Côte d'Ivoire within a more unified Africa.
She described her political vision as bold, centered on three key pillars, including the reconciliation of Ivorians.
National reconciliation, transformation, and sovereignty. Our country is torn by misunderstanding and political disputes, not by injustices. However, it is essential to turn the page. Reconciliation is a decisive step, and it is unavoidable. We must reach out to one another, listen, forgive, and rebuild together.
Simone Gbagbo's announcement raises the number of officially declared candidates to 3, alongside former President Laurent Gbagbo of the PPACI and former Prime Minister Pascal Affi-N'Guessan of the Front Popular Ivorian. Meanwhile, incumbent President Alassane Ouattara remains non-committal about the possible bid for re-election. Tijani Chiam is expected to run under the PDCI banner, and Charles Blekode is likely to represent COGEP.
Christopher Atiche with that report filed in by WADR's Abidjan correspondent Albain Ade. On the labour front, the Gambia Teachers Union GTU has announced a sit-down strike across board and mission schools nationwide effective today, Monday. This action follows the government's failure to disburse November salaries for teachers in both senior secondary schools and the School Improvement Grant SIG for mission schools. The union stated that decision was taken after multiple attempts to engage the government on these pressing issues, which they say have severely affected teachers' livelihoods and disrupted the smooth functioning of schools. From Banjul, Sankule Janko reports.
The union emphasized that the strike was a last resort, as repeated requests for dialogue and resolution have been ignored. Momodu Bakadem is the communications assistant of the Gambia Teachers Union.
The Gambia Teachers Union issued the press release to call on teachers that are in board schools and in mission schools to lay their tunes. Basically, it's as a result of government non-compliant in terms of the payment of SIG to mission schools, but also the delay in the payment of salaries to teachers and employees of government that are in both schools.
Teachers have vowed to remain on strike until the government addresses the salary arrears and the release of the SIG, warning that the strike could be extended if the government fails to adhere to their ultimatum.
Yes, that is the first strategy that the union is employing, that all teachers that are in both schools and mission schools, of course, would put their tools down for now. If and until the close of work on Tuesday, if government did not positively respond, then we have to employ another strategy too. That could include also calling on the entire teaching fraternity now to lay their tools in solidarity with those teachers that are affected. But for now, it's only teachers in the board schools and mission schools.
As a result, the union is making these demands.
That there should be timely payment of salaries to staff in board schools, but also for government to meet their commitment of the payment of the School Improvement Grant to the mission schools.
This action has sparked concern among parents, students, and education stakeholders who fear the prolonged strike may have negative implications for the quality of education in the country. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Sankule Janko reporting from Banjul.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal on 94.9 FM and online on wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. The new Senegalese legislature to be inaugurated today, December 2, amid Macky Sall's withdrawal. Special voting begins nationwide in Ghana for security officers and other key institutions, but postponed in 2 regions due to ballot leakage. Still ahead in the news, Malian army announces the neutralization of key leaders of armed groups in the north. Advocates highlight unique challenges for people with disabilities and HIV in commemoration of World AIDS Day. We also have the press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Now to security matters, precisely in the Sahel, the Malian army has announced the neutralization of key leaders of armed groups in the north. Several high-ranking members of northern armed groups have been killed following airstrikes carried out by the Malian armed forces in Tinzoatan, near the Algerian border. This operation comes a day after the formation of the Front de Libération of Azawad, FLA, a political military coalition. Oge Berika has more.
In a statement broadcast on national television, the Chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces confirmed the neutralization of several key figures in the armed groups. Among those killed is Fahad Ag Al-Mahmoud, Secretary General of the Gacha, the Imgad Tuareg Self-Defense Group and allies, which joined the separatist movement in 2023. Several other high-profile members were also killed during the operation, including Shogib Ag Athaha, Al-Baraka Ag Al-Faki, Sidi Ag Baye, Mohammed Ag Asharif, Musa Ag Bey, Usman Ag Mohammedin, and Bacha Ag. According to the military, these territories were involved in numerous targeted attacks against civilians and Malian armed forces. In a separate statement, the separatist movement acknowledged the loss of its leaders, whom it described as martyrs for the Azawadian cause. This significant blow to northern armed groups comes just after the creation of the Front de Libération de l'Azawad, FLA, a coalition aimed at defending the interests of the Azawad people, addressing security challenges, and advocating for the region's political recognition, according to the FLA spokesperson. For the Malian army, this success significantly hampers the ability of armed groups to coordinate future attacks. In July, the armed forces suffered heavy losses during violent clashes in Tinzoatan.
Oge Obi Erika with that report. Now let's take you to Nigeria, where the Plan Health and Development Initiative has drawn attention to the unique struggles faced by people living with disabilities who are also living with HIV. This call comes as the global community observes World AIDS Day. The advocacy group emphasized that this vulnerable population faces compounded challenges, including rights violations, stigma, and the lack of adequate support. WADR's Abuja correspondent Usman Umar reports.
Speaking to WADR on this year's theme, Take the Right Path, My Health, My Right, the Executive Director of Plan Health and Development Initiative, Olatunde Oladapo, underscored the dual discrimination endured by people living with disability with HIV.
Persons with disabilities are not usually focused on as key populations, and I will explain. A woman who is HIV positive and blind, for example, may not have access to information even on how do you take your drugs and things like that. Other people who have hearing, speech impairment, you understand. Issues around accessibility to services in terms of physical accessibility in respect to people who are on wheelchair, for example. Other forms of deprivation, barriers to access to services for persons with disabilities.
Voicing their experiences, some individuals living with HIV/AIDS stressed the importance of awareness campaigns and robust support systems in combating stigma and fostering inclusivity.
I was born with HIV. It was transmitted via mother-to-child transmission, and I got to know when I was about 5 years old from my grandmother. So it was not really easy accepting it as a child at that time, but I just took it like every other person would take it. After I mingled with some of my peers that are also positive, they shared their stories on how they've been living positively and they've been taking good care of themselves despite having the ailment or the disease. Then I picked up from there and I picked up from their lessons.
According to the World Health Organization, WHO, Nigeria's HIV/AIDS prevalence remains 4%. This is despite significant efforts to curb the epidemic. Experts believe that addressing the intersecting challenges faced by marginalized groups is crucial for reducing this figure and achieving equitable healthcare access. World AIDS Day, observed annually on December 1, serves as a reminder of the global fight against HIV/AIDS and the importance of leaving no one behind in the pursuit of health equity. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, we remain in Nigeria for today's press review with WADR's Usman Omar, who says the debate on the 2025 budget is intensifying.
Welcome to the press review segment today from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. We begin the day with a daily independent newspaper that is leading with this story on the 2025 budget. It says, 2025 budget. With 13.8 trillion naira deficit, federal government may return to ways and means advances. As with a rider, experts canvass listing assets to raise equity. Above the masthead, you have the story. SERAP, that is Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, asks Tinubu to reveal COIS that fled with 31 ministries, departments and agencies 167 billion naira. And quickly, we move to Nigerian Tribune newspaper. It's leading with this story. Tax reform bills, confusion in House of Representatives as All Progressive Congress caucus aborts fixed meeting. And there's a rider here that says, Clerk announces suspension of plenary on proposed legislation. Another rider, why Southern lawmakers are divided. All Progressives Congress National Working Committee keeps mute on lawmakers. Other stories, 10,000 jobs at risk as Seaport Concession Agreement renewal stalls. And finally, from the Nigerian Tribune, Ondo workers will receive minimum wage next week. Nigeria Labour Congress is assuring there. Before we close, let's quickly take a look at Nigerian News Direct newspaper, which is leading with this story. Passing new tax bill into law will have consequences. Only Lagos, Rivers will benefit. This is from Professor Babagana Umar Zulum, Governor of Borno State. And on this, we've come to the end of the press review for now as I hand you back to the studios.
Many thanks, Usman Umar.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
In this segment of the news, we take you to our report on the Gambia Teachers Union's call for a sit-down strike in board and mission schools across the country, which started today, Monday. The union said the strike is as a result of the government's failure to disburse November salaries for both senior secondary school teachers and the School Improvement Grant SIG for mission schools. Our guest is Momodu Bakadem, the communication assistant of the Gambia Teachers Union. Mr. Dem began explaining what led to the sit-down strike.
The Gambia Teachers Union issued a press release yesterday to call on teachers that are in board schools and in mission schools to lay their tools. Basically, it's as a result of government non-compliant in terms of the payment of SIG to mission schools, but also the delay in the payment of salaries to teachers and employees of government that are in board schools. Because before now, the union had engagements because we realized that there was a delay in the payment of salaries, especially for those in the board schools when the academic year began in September, October. And then we had that engagement with government through the Ministry of Public Service, where they gave us the assurance that the delay would not happen again. And then this time around too, it happened. So the union felt like it has been sort of went back on their words in order to ensure that they pay the salaries of those employees that are in the board schools, but also in relation to the payment of the School Improvement Grant to mission schools. That is a commitment that government took with regards to education finances.
So as we speak, are you still engaging the authorities while the sit-down strike takes effect on Monday?
Yes, there's not been formal engagement with government for now, but there have been sort of an informal engagement with some of the representatives of government through some of the officials of the union. But we know it's weekend. We are going on to a Monday, but formal engagement has not begun. We have some officials of the government are engaged with the union, but not to that level of formality that we're looking forward to now.
Okay, so this sit-down strike, as it is only affecting teachers who are working in the board schools, like you said, whose salaries have not been paid. It's not the entire teachers general body in it.
Yes, that is the first strategy that the union is employing. That all teachers that are in board schools and mission schools, of course, would put their tools down for now. If like on the press release, we have said that until the close of work on Tuesday, if government did not positively respond, then we have to employ another strategy too. That could include also calling on the entire teaching fraternity now to lay their tools in solidarity with those teachers that are affected. But for now, it's only teachers in the board schools and mission schools.
Just remind me again, and before I let you go, Mr. Dem, your demands from the authorities are?
That there should be timely payment of salaries to staff in board schools, but also for government to meet their commitment of the payment of the school improvement grant to the mission schools.
That has been our guest, Momodu Bakadem, the communication assistant of the Gambia Teachers Union. Well, in the sporting world, dozens of people were reportedly killed Sunday in clashes between fans at football match in Inzerukuri, Guinea's second largest city. Hospital sources told the media describing scenes of mass carnage. There are bodies lined up as far as the eye can see in the hospital. Others are lying on the floor in the hallways. The morgue is full, one doctor said, on condition of anonymity because he was unauthorized to speak to the media. Now, angry demonstrators also vandalized and set fire to the Inzerukuri police station, according to witnesses. Local media said the march was part of a tournament organized in honor of Guinea's junta leader, General Mamadou Doumbouya, who seized power in a 2021 coup and has installed himself as president. Let's now join Sankle Janko for more on sports.
Hello out there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Slots for the much anticipated CAF African School Football Championship finals are gradually filling up as Africa's largest youth football competition approaches its continental finals set to take place in 2025. Following the COSAFA zonal unions clinched by South Africa in both boys and girls division, the West African Football Union WAFU B zone recently concluded its zonal qualifiers in Niamey, Niger, with Cote d'Ivoire crowned champions in the boys division, while the girls will be represented by Ghana. After two highly successful seasons, the CAF African Schools Football Championship is once again in full swing, with thousands of teenage boys and girls under the age of 15 contesting for a place in the continental final across CAF's 6 zonal unions, according to CAF official website. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. And many thanks to Krista Mukidi and Maojo Juve for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook, WADR English Service, and stream live on WADR.org. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our flagship health program, Well Body, with Ogi Bereka, to be followed at the top of the hour of 1 p.m. by the second edition of our news in French, Info Chez Vous with Isuli Jeju. I'm Abdullah Hassan. Good afternoon and enjoy the rest of our broadcast.